Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hey, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Kristen, and we are going to talk about money. And this is a touchy conversation. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes because I don't think it's where you think it's going to go. I want to share with you some of the deep, life-changing discoveries I made around my relationship to money and how they played out through decades of my life and what I had to do to correct course. Of course, I'm going to start with a story, and it's kind of going to go a little all over the place. So hang with me because it's got lots of rich, juicy parts for us to dissect together. About 10 or 12 years ago, I enrolled in a coaching certification program that was designed to help me coach people through money issues. And as these things go, it was because I had a lot of clients struggling with money issues and I wanted to just sharpen the saw. But what ends up happening is that I needed to learn more than they did. So I had to go deep into my own money beliefs and break down and break through all of my money blocks. Wow. I had no idea how many money blocks I had until I took this class. And now I help people do the same thing. And I got to tell you, it's so powerful. Did you know, for example, our relationship with money can take us right into our worthiness wounds? Well, I got to dive into that one and a lot more. So the story started with childhood. That's where you have to go because that's where all of our subconscious beliefs are formed. Before we're ever 5 years old, we're programmed in a way that we carry out through our life until we bring them into consciousness and evaluate them and decide if they're going to be good for us or not good for us. Unfortunately, I was almost 50 years old before I did that with regard to money. So let's go back again and review something that I learned in my childhood when it came to money. My parents were of the greatest generation. They were a typical 50s couple. My dad worked and he managed all the money. He saved it, he invested it, and he controlled it. My mom raised our family and managed the house with whatever money he gave her each week to do that. She gave up her beloved career in nursing to raise my brothers and I, and she made a lot of sacrifices, which I apparently watched carefully. My dad believed in spending only what you had in the bank after you saved something. He never accrued debt. He paid cash for everything. When I was 6 years old, he wanted to build his dream home, which became my heaven on earth, but he paid cash for each stage of building that house. It took 15 years to actually finish it, but I loved it. We lived on this 30-acre field with cows and vegetable gardens, and I grew up carefree, never wanting for anything, never feeling lack or scarcity. But I have to tell you, we were not affluent. I didn't get everything that I ever wanted, but I always felt I had everything I could ever want. How did that happen? Well, I started to examine that. I really couldn't ever remember a time in my childhood where I felt anything less than incredibly blessed. My parents never fought about money that I knew of. There was always enough. They were great partners to each other. and they were dedicated to their family, including their sisters, brothers, parents. They took care of nieces and nephews. So to me, when I thought about my childhood and the role model they were when it came to money, I had it really well. So then I was asked to really examine my beliefs. And those beliefs came directly from my parents and their values. But was it my relationship to money or was it their relationship to money that I was playing out? The best way I could describe my relationship to money was that I didn't have one. There's stories of me getting paid by checks for babysitting when I was in high school, and my mom finding them years later in a drawer, in a coat pocket, uncashed. I just did it because I loved doing it. I didn't want it to be about the money. That's how disconnected to money I was. From the time I was probably 8 years old, my dream was to grow up and be a mom and have 6 or 7 children. And I would be a stay-at-home mom, and that would be my job. I didn't need any money. My husband would be providing it. So I carried forward that model from the 50s into my life. And I learned through this at the age of 50 that I was not only careless with my money, I called that carefree, unattached. What really, I was not unattached. I was disconnected completely. So I just trusted and turned over all money matters to the head of the house, and I never had to worry about it for a second. As I went further into those subconscious beliefs about money, I also discovered that I had a belief that my husband would provide for everything I needed, and my job was to manage the household and to do so responsibly and frugally. I believed that because of that, I would always be taken care of, not just in the short term, but long-term financial needs would all be taken care of. I believed that it was wrong to have a relationship with money, to make it important. Maybe I feared it would control me, so I stayed very detached from it. I kind of believed that if I cared about money, I'd get fixated on it, and then I'd get greedy, and that would be wrong. I never wanted money to be more important to me than my relationships. I never wanted money to control my happiness. I believed money was necessary for our survival, but not mandatory for my happiness. My relationship with money was that it was something necessary. I believed that it was wrong to think I was better than or less than someone else because of how much money we had. I believed that money could cause all kinds of arguments, and I believed and heard the old adages. Money doesn't grow on trees. Money is the root of all evil. Money comes and money goes, but love remains constant. Money is meant to be shared and used to help others. So some of those beliefs I felt like were actually good. I do have a generous heart. I came out of that childhood with an altruistic mindset. I live with an abundant mindset, trusting that I will have all that I need, as long as someone else was earning it, right? So not only did I not know my own beliefs around money and how those were impacting my family, I didn't know my husband's beliefs about money either. And this was the person who was providing for all of my short and long-term needs. So when I have been married and we were raising 5 kids, and from the outside, we looked a lot like my childhood family. You know, we were doing pretty good. And I looked at, as I did this class, I started to look at the model of Bob's childhood and what he learned before I ever talked to him about it. Bob's dad was just like mine. He worked hard and he provided for his family. But unlike our family, his mom worked too. She was a teacher. Bob's dad was an excellent money manager, just like my dad. So they did quite well. It just made sense that Bob would be doing that too. I subconsciously followed the patterns of my mom and assumed subconsciously that Bob followed the patterns of his dad. Therefore, we would be just fine. Well, I'm going to fast forward this story a couple decades into our marriage. By this time, I was in my late 40s, And I was noticing a few things that would show up that were red flags. And Bob would try to say something to me when it involved money or paying bills or anything. I bristled. I avoided. I felt myself holding on to fear instead of trust. My instincts were telling me something wasn't quite right, and it didn't match the rules I had around money. But I didn't want to talk about it. If Bob wanted to talk about it, it was like, nope, that's your responsibility, not mine. And oh, wow, was I ever wrong. When I did the work to get parts of me that needed to be healed around just talking about money with Bob and facing the fact that my head in the sand approach to money management was not working, I discovered some really important things. As it turned out, as good as Bob's dad was at managing money, he never taught Bob anything about what he did. Whereas my dad sat me down in high school and taught me how to budget. He funded the budget, but I knew if my money ran out, I had to figure it out. He would hold strong boundaries for me so that I could learn, all the while knowing that if I messed up, I could go to him and he'd help me, but he never fully rescued me. It was invaluable what I learned and how I learned. So while I was blessed because he paid for my college education and provided me with everything I needed during that time, he also included providing me with a monthly budget, and it was strict. He was not going to ever become my personal ATM machine. Bob, on the other hand, was not taught about a budget, and he was not shown how to invest or save money. He was not taught one single thing when it came to money management. So all that time that I had been refusing to partner with him, I assumed we had college funds set up, life insurance policies were in place, savings, retirement, everything was being handled, all our bills were paid, and all the stuff you need as our kids grew up, I thought was being met. Bob had a PhD. He was very smart. We had a very thriving and successful practice. He earned lots of money. So money just was not our problem. Managing it, however, was a whole other ballgame. And soon little things started happening that became big things. And I realized we didn't have backup. Medical bills came from a near tragic accident that happened with our youngest child that exposed one of those red flags. I noticed late notices came in the mail. We got a tax bill that we weren't prepared for. I was really good at asking before spending, but Bob was also really good at saying yes to everything I asked for without a budget. So his experience of providing was dancing with my experience of spending whatever was needed for our home and family, and neither of us were on the same page, nor were we in partnership around money. We were both in a codependent pattern. Neither of us had any sort of financial plan to follow, and I wouldn't talk or listen to anything he had to say or ask around finances. That was his job. That was his job. That was his job. That's how I dismissed it. Well, I will tell you that created a mountain of debt and a sudden stop the press moment for the two of us. Here we were, well past midlife, finally sitting down and looking at our finances together. We looked at everything. I will tell you, it was sobering. It felt scary. For me, it brought up a lot of anger and resentment. I found myself wanting to say, you were supposed to be handling this and you didn't. It brought up shame for Bob because he felt he had let me down. There was my disappointment face that I gave everybody with my shame. All of that led me back to this training around money. And I had to dust off my notes from that class, sit down with Bob, and ask him some of the same questions about money that I had answered in my class. What's important to mention right now is that until I was able to own my part of the problem, until I was able to accept responsibility for my irrational belief systems about money, I was just going to stay angry and a victim, and Bob was going to shut down. That process that I had to go through looked a little bit like this. First, live unconsciously and never change a thing, chalk it all up to, well, that's life. The next phase was bring my hidden money beliefs into conscious awareness. And you might be asking, well, how do I do that? And I'll tell you. The third is notice how those beliefs were working or not working. And most of mine were not working for much longer than I had ever realized. Then I went through a blame. I was blaming others for why those things weren't working. If Bob had just been like my dad, it would have all been fine. Then not liking it because I was sitting in victimhood and I don't like how that feels. I felt so disempowered around our money and our money conversations. And then I had to realize the role I had and how we got there. Then the next part was to verbally take responsibility for my part, which was very humbling. And the next was to consciously change my patterns while respecting both money and Bob. Then I had to form new beliefs around money. And that was hard because I really did like that hands-off, irresponsible, quote unquote, quick, carefree approach to money management. But I had to make it so that my belief was this is empowering for me to build a relationship and partner in money management. Then I had to step into my own money empowerment. And last, I had to form a healthy relationship with money by connecting money to my own worthiness. I was worth balancing my checkbook. I was worth looking at where every penny went. And I was worth living back inside a budget that was functional. So as our kids were getting ready and they were learning about money, one of the red flags I missed was that I sat them down like my dad did and showed them the exact same budget that he taught me, right? When they got in high school. And I said to Bob, our budget is funding their budget. So they learned to budget. And Bob was like, sure. And he knew what he put in their account to teach them about their money. But they would go to Bob when they wanted things because Bob was a yes person. And I was not always a yes mom. So I noticed that suddenly on the weekend, Bob was going off with them to buy them a tank of gas. And I said, wait, they have budget for gas. Why are you buying them gas every weekend? And he's like, well, they just, it felt good. That was his love language, was to provide. And I'm like, well, now their budget's blown because you're not really teaching them to budget. And he looked at me like, I don't really know what you're talking about. I never had a budget. I don't know what a budget is. And so I got nauseous when he said that. I was like, oh my gosh, you've never had a budget? How in the world are we operating here? I didn't even understand that he didn't have a budget. It was the tip of an iceberg, a financial iceberg that still took me another decade to address. But finally we did. So since then, working with my clients, I've learned that so many people don't have a healthy relationship to money and that they don't have a good avenue to talk about it with their partner. When I began exploring my money beliefs, I found, for example, a belief that said it would be very disrespectful and possibly emasculate and insult my husband if I asked him to show me how he was managing our money, or if I asked him anything about our finances. So not only did I not want to do it, I felt it would be the worst thing in the world to ask about. So one day I sat down and said, Bob, I think I need to ask about our finances. And he's like, finally, I've been waiting for years. I want this conversation. I don't know what I'm doing over here. You're good at money. I'm not. I want us to understand this. And I'm like, why haven't you told me that? And he's like, you always said, nope, not my problem. It's your responsibility. So I've just been over here doing the best I can. So once I formed my own relationship with money, I realized I was really good at it and I was empowered by it. And now we started a money habit of meeting every Friday. We called it Friday Finance. We would get our coffee, we would get out our computers and our spreadsheets and our bank accounts, and we would look at how are we doing. And we did it every Friday for probably 6 months, because we had to, I had to learn to show up in that relationship. So that was why it was every week. But two, I had to learn how to partner with Bob, and he had to learn how to trust me, to not judge and get angry and shame him for things that, he should or shouldn't have done. And I had to not go into one down mode of, I should have done this sooner. So it took a lot of practice for us to have conversations around money. So right now, we are at the beginning of 2024. This episode is airing at the beginning of the new year. And one of the big conversations that Bob and I do now on an annual basis is that we set our goals for debt management. If we need to pay down a debt, or do we want to pay off one of our cars, or what do we want to do this year? We look at our savings goal. We look at our insurances, life insurances, long-term health care insurance. We look at our money flow. We look at our income. How are we generating money to support this budget? It's flawless. It's actually enjoyable. We love getting together and working to the same end. And it's been transformative. That sobering day that we both looked at everything and saw the amount of debt that we had to conquer felt like we might not ever get out of debt. And I have to tell you, aside from a mortgage payment and car payments, we set a goal. We made a 5-year plan to get on track where we should be for the age we were. And we did it in 3 because we did it together. 1, we played to our strengths. And I want to say something magical happens when you align in your money mindset and your blocks disappear. It accelerates. And there's so many money tools and so many good ways to make that happen, that if you struggle, whether it's your relationship with money or a relationship to your partner around money, or anything that is maybe blocking you to where you've hit a ceiling and you'll never make more than what you have, those are all limiting beliefs. Money is energy. It's an unlimited resource that we can tap into, but you have to be able to examine these subconscious beliefs. You've got to be willing to sit with yourself and your results of those subconscious beliefs kind of maybe not serving you well, and partner up and commit and show up and build a healthy relationship to money, and it becomes magical. So, Kristen, what is your relationship to money, and what did you grow up believing, and what was your role model?
It's interesting. I've really been thinking about this while you were talking. I had 2 very different models of money demonstrated to me as I was growing up. My parents were divorced. So I saw my mom on one side every month sitting down in the 80s, early 90s, paying the bills with her check, saying, I feel sick to my stomach paying these bills. I really it seemed like a horrible thing because she didn't want to do it. And then I see my dad on the other side, who's such a good steward with money and knew how to save money. Not that my mom didn't know how to save money. I really don't know what went on. I don't know what she grew up with, but we were always in survival mode. So money always seemed different at my mom's house than at my dad's house. And my dad was always there to help me whenever I needed money in a good way, not like I was asking for money to go to a concert or anything. But when I got my first car, he made me raise half the money, and he said he would pay the other half. Now, back then, I think my first car was $4,000. But I really learned the value of earning that money myself. I worked at a restaurant, I made tips, and I would count out my cash until I finally had $2,000. And I proudly went to my dad and said, Dad, I'm ready to buy the car. And we did it together. So I had such good experiences with money with my dad, and my mom, on the other hand, not. We had to get food from the church. We had to get gifts from the church for Christmas. So thankfully, I think I picked up more from my dad than my mom. And I've taught my kids to save money. We're really good about how we use our money. And at the same time, sometimes my husband and I aren't on the same page and we both spend money on something maybe we shouldn't have because we didn't talk about it together. So, we have those things too.
Everybody does. I think it's a big part. So in my my mentor around learning all of these tools and tips and ways to explore our relationship to money, but that mentor always said, how you do money is how you do everything. So when I'm in my coaching role and I'm talking to clients and money comes up, or when it's a relationship issue, or it's a time management issue, or it's a self-care issue, I listen to it and I switch gears and say, how do you do money? Because it's the same thing. If you all look at how you operate with money, for me, it was a hands off. I'm great at self-neglect. I didn't have a relationship with my own self as far as self-care and self-nurturing and investing in myself. I was more of a giver. I gave it all away, but I didn't do very good at replenishing myself. I had to earn that if I was going to give myself time or resource. So how we do money is how we do everything. I was resistant as heck to that, but it's proven to be a true statement. So what you said, Kristen, is interesting because I think in a lot of ways we do have mixed messages around money and mixed, belief systems. And how much time and what ways did you examine where those belief systems played out for you? Have you ever had that?
Well, I'm thinking too, as you're talking, I watched my mom put everything on credit cards. And I remember spring break, I was offered my first credit card. And I was like, great, now I can start spending money.
Yeah.
But I also watched my dad pay for everything with cash. Like he would go to McDonald's and he always had to pay with cash.
Yeah.
And now I kind of understand why in this moment while I'm talking that like he really showed me the importance of the value of earning your money and then spending it, not spending it before you don't have it. So I kind of find myself in between sometimes. Amazon's very easy. Oh, I really want that, but should I have spent the money on that right now? Should we be saving? It's hard because I did see both models, but I do see the really true value in what my dad showed me, and I really try to stick to it.
In this training, we talk about money archetypes, and there's an archetype called the accumulator. And it turns out that Bob was an accumulator energy, but he had a tie with the nurturer, and money is a way of nurturing others. But his personality in that money is to accumulate it. Like he's so frugal. He would not spend on himself, but he'll always let me spend, right? And so that was an interesting thing to learn about him. I have a son and his wife who are both accumulators, and some people call them penny pinchers, Scrooges, tightwads. They have all kinds of negative nicknames from other people who like to spend, but accumulators accumulate. They do accumulate wealth over time. Because sometimes you'll hear of people that have unlimited funds counting their pennies, and you're like, you don't even need to do that. You've got all that you could ever need, but it's because they watched their pennies, their bottom line, that they accumulated what they had. So for me, I want to enjoy life. I want to live and participate and show up in every aspect of life, whether that's travel or adventure or Christmas morning or, any kind of thing, family vacations. It's like there's no better investment if it means you've had this wonderful experience, right? And so that was where I'd want to spend. And it was not in the budget because I had an accumulator behind the scenes without a budget who just didn't spend. It was like, well, we needed a house repair, but there was not money for that. And it can cause these unspoken tensions when you're trying to work with someone else and they have a different personality than you do around money and different belief systems and then different money management styles. And a lot of couples, they say one of the biggest reasons that couples fight or their marriage can end roots in issues around money. And I would say that is, I think, from my experience, looking at it, true, because how we do money is how we do everything. And it becomes a source.
I just want to chime in and say I'm thinking about money with my husband and I, and it's so funny. He hates every time that I tell this story, but when I first met him, he was the type of person that would not pay his cell phone bill until 3 months in, and they finally contacted him and said, "We haven't received your bill in 3 months. We haven't received payment in 3 months. We're going to cut you off." And I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I walking into? So I immediately took over the money in our marriage. And well, you know this, we've had some issues where I'm the one that watches the money, so I know how much we have to spend. And then all of a sudden, Chris will spend something not knowing anything, and then I get mad at him. But I can do it on my side because I'm watching it. Like, I feel comfortable spending it. But then when he does it, it causes a fight. I'm like, what is this on the credit card? Why did you spend this? And we had to really talk about that and talk that through. And he's like, I need to feel like I can spend my money. And it was a hard issue. And now we're at a point too where we want to start saving money. There's repairs that we want to do at the house. Or Hudson needs braces. And it's like, okay, now we need to tighten up. But we've been used to, if I want to buy a pair of yoga pants, I buy a pair of yoga pants. But right now it's like, I think we need to halt that. And he just went on this trip and bought an expensive sweatshirt. And I was like, what in the world? But I'm trying not to say anything because I'm trying to respect his choices.
Right. But it does require sitting down. And I think we do have to have our own. I always feel like I want Bob to have his own money and me to have mine. Because if I want to buy him a present, I don't want him to see it go out. And
right.
We created in our budget, our fun money. And Bob will probably save his and I will spend mine, but that's okay because it's not in the budget for our household goals. It's just for us to do what makes us feel good. So it's the feel good bucket. And we just have a little way of funding it, and if I sell something in a garage sale, it goes in my fun money account. And if Bob does whatever he does, he saves or whatever, he doesn't use his. And then when he wants to contribute or do something fun, he's got it. Or if he wants to buy what he wants to buy. So we've kind of separated that part. We have our joint accounts and I think we're on all of them, but he gets that money and I have mine on our own for our own autonomy, because you're right. Chris works, he earns good money too, just like, you do. So why wouldn't he be able to say, it's my money, why can't I get a nice sweatshirt? Right. And
right.
It's, but the person who's managing it has to know, okay, that's okay too. But are we on the same page is it coming out of the fund for braces or household repairs? Or is it, coming out of the fund money bucket? But if you get so frugal and so focused on not spending, then you start resenting that you're not really getting pleasure in life. So it's important to have money that allows you that breathing room and allocate the funds so that household and family needs can be met.
I keep thinking about too, how you say, money affects everything, like the relationship part of it. Like, how do we come together to go forward in a way that we both feel comfortable and speak to each other in a way that to make that happen without fighting?
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging.
It's a very big challenge because our money beliefs are so deeply rooted into a survival. Money is about that physical world survival. Like, how do we pay our bills? How do we provide for our family and have food to eat every day? Like, it takes money. And so it goes to that very basic need that we're messing with that if you start to mess with the money conversation. And it can throw you into some and most couples will avoid it because they can sense where that line is. So they just don't talk about it. And hopefully, you know, it's not a big deal to let it go. But if you're like Bob and I, and we let it go for decades, not talking about it, oh my goodness, what we could have done different if we had just funneled our money and directed it and managed it together with the same goal in mind, we would have been in such a different position. Possibly,
Right.
maybe not, but I would like to think that we would be in a better place if I had said, hey, let's sit down together and let's look at our life plan, you know, and not wait until we're in our 50s to look at that long life funding source, but to really have these healthy discussions about it and find the balance that allows us to enjoy vacations and be able to do household repairs or pay a tax bill that you didn't expect and have the funds available to do it versus having no plan and just using credit cards as a strategy, because they're not a strategy. They're a tool, a resource, but they're certainly not a strategy for money management. Is just knowing you have credit card to pay for stuff. So
exactly.
Yeah, money, especially coming off holidays, you know, now in January, a lot of the credit card bills are high because we did our holiday shopping and bought even food for company and guests and travel and all that. January is often a time where you really want to look at those money habits and how to communicate from a place of ownership, not blame and not victimhood, but empowerment, and have a good, healthy discussion around the plan going forward. And if you can, you know, really map out your annual budget for the year, because we're in a prime time to look at it. It's not too late to look at what is our debt. And I would love to have you all meet us over in the blessing room at Patreon. You can join us there because Kristen and I are going to lay out some tools and a money worksheet just to go through some basics for looking ahead at 2024 so that you can feel empowered to follow a really good financial plan. And bringing you together, whether it's just you or it's you with a family or a partner, really looking at how money helps you operate in your life with integrity, with empowerment, with peace, and with love. Take care. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart, and I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, you are important, and most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself, and do so with love.